going to hear one of the most amazing testimonies that you've ever heard. This is just phenomenal, crazy, kind of outrageous, but it's just a great story. It's the story of the Satanic Night Club, and man, this is wild. So I just want to introduce Nancy Cohen and welcome her to come and share this story, and you are going to get blown away. And as Nancy always says, start expecting for God to start doing this type of phenomenal work in you and through you, because He's raising up a generation who know who they are, who know who their God is, who walk in their sonship, and this is what sonship looks like when you're living it out. So Nancy, take it away, the Satanic Nightclub story.
Okay. I used to have a business, three different businesses. One was a real estate brokerage firm, and I was coming out of a closing one night that was getting funding from overseas, and so it was quite late when we closed the property. I was walking down the street trying to get to my car, and in order for me to get to my car from where the closing company was, I had to walk by a Satanic nightclub. And in this nightclub, which was quite disreputable, they had the highest practicing Satanists who are part of something called the Satanic Order of Melchizedek, and that are part of something called the Urantia group. And they were there were kids in there that have actually done human sacrifices and eaten human organs and drunk human blood, because in order to be qualified for that's one of their prerequisites. I was walking by this club, and I was all dressed up because I had just come out of my closing, and all of a sudden these young men that were gathered around outside, I would say there were, as much as I can remember, about 12 of them standing outside the doors of this club. And when I walked by, they started to scream all of this hideous, ugly, sexual stuff at me. And I turned around and looked, and they had all kinds of evil, twisted, Garden of Eden tattoos all over their chests. Many of them were bare-chested. They had their faces painted white, their eyes blacked in, kind of like Cleopatra style. They had their hair standing up, sprayed 15 different colors with 20 different piercings. One of the guys had an 18-foot boa constrictor wrapped around his neck and crawling down his arm. Another young man had a big link chain around his neck with human bones hanging off of this chain. As I was walking by and they started to scream at me, it was almost close to midnight because we had to wait for money from the other side of the world to transfer. And I've never really been afraid, because I spent many years doing nothing but deliverance, casting out demons all day, every day. So I'm not afraid of darkness, but I just thought to myself, it's a wise thing for me to get home. So I picked up my step, and I began to walk a little bit faster. As I was walking about a block away, I heard a voice say, "I want you to go back into that club." And of course, I immediately rebuked the devil, because I just didn't think there was any way that God would ever ask me to go back into that club. And so I began to argue with the Lord, and I said, Lord, your word says wherever two or more of us are gathered together in your name, there you are. And I said, I'm only one, so how about tomorrow I'll come back and bring my intercessors and pray over that club. And I just kept on walking. About another half a block down the road, again, a second time, the Lord said, I want you to go back into that club. And immediately I began to use scriptures to argue with him, which of course is a total waste of time. But I said, Lord, you've given us the spirit of wisdom, and after all, what part does light have with darkness? And I'm just arguing with him about the wisdom about going back into that place. When I hit my car and I reached out to touch the door handle of the car, like a trumpet blast, he shouted at me and he said, did you say you would go where I told you to go and do what I told you to do and say what I told you to say? And I'm going, yes, Lord, but, okay. I knew I was going to have to go back. So sure enough, I walked back all the way, and even then, I stood across from the Satanic Night Club thinking to myself, maybe the Lord doesn't really want me to go in there. Maybe he just wants to know, would I be willing to go in there. But of course the ram in the bush never showed up. So I walked across the street, and when I hit the front door, all of these young men began to grab me all over my body and run their fingers through my hair, and one guy actually is flicking his tongue in and out of my ear like a serpent, and it's like slimy stuff. And I'm thinking, oh God, you better be in this or I'm in big trouble. When I walked through the door, the whole spiritual atmosphere changed. Every single person that was in that club turned around and looked right at me. All the drinking stopped, all the dancing stopped, all the music stopped, all the joking stopped. And as they're staring at me and I'm looking through this whole room, I saw the women had their faces all painted white with their eyes all blacked in. They had their hair all ratted up, sprayed white. They had on see-through gauze, so they're dressed in gauze, dancing around like a bunch of ghosts. And the men had on long robes with chains around their belts and an upside-down cross hanging from the chained belt. On the table, on every table, there was a vase of urine with the cross of Jesus Christ turned upside down in the vase of urine. When I walked in, all of the activity stopped, and everybody started to look at me. And being a deliverance minister, I know that the eyes are the windows of the soul.
Yeah.
So I'm looking into their eyes, and all I can see is just death and destruction and suicide and self-destruction and all those kinds of things inside of their eyes. But their eyes were dead. There was like no light anywhere in their eyes. I was so transfixed by what was in their eyes that I had a hard time hearing from the Lord. Finally, he said, go down to the music stand and stand in the music stand. And I'm thinking, oh God, you're going to make me preach the gospel in here. I just know it, That's really a mentality that is being shifted at the present moment. So I walk down and I stand in the music stand, and I'm looking, all the musicians totally backed against the wall. And I was standing there looking, not saying a single word, having no idea what I was supposed to do there. And I'm so engaged with looking into their eyes that I couldn't really hear. Oh, Lord, what do you want me to do here? And so I shut my eyes. When I shut my eyes, I heard for the very first time the sound of all creation groaning. It was a very, very haunting sound. It was like it would go very, very deep, and then it'd spike up really high, and then it moved from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And all I could think of was, oh my God, what is this sound? And it was like a living sound, totally. It had a life of its own. All of a sudden, the sound multiplied by 10, and then the 10 turned into like 100 sounds, swirling all around my body. And it was a very deep groaning and moaning and crying out, like deep, calling unto deep. Suddenly, I asked the Lord, I said, Father, what is this sound? And he said, even now, all creation is groaning for the manifestation of the sons of the living God, which you are. All you have to do is sound back, and they'll come. And is it 5 minutes?
On it? It's still going. Sweet. Yep, carry on.
Okay.
We are well past 5 minutes, but that's okay. We're at 9 minutes, so yeah, but
okay. So the sound was back. Just swirling around.
So all you have to do is sound back.
And it was so engulfing me that I broke into profuse weeping. And the Lord began to speak to me, and he said, I didn't come into the world to condemn the world. I came to the world that the world might be saved. For I am indeed the Savior of all men, but especially those who believe. I am the light that lights the whole earth, and the light that lights the heart of every man. For to every man is given a measure of faith. And I looked out, I opened my eyes and I looked out and I said, a measure of light. I don't see a measure of light anywhere. And for all that was in me, I couldn't figure out what he meant. Sound back. So standing there and looking at all these people, I'm thinking, if there's only one person, Lord, just show me the one person, and I'll take that one person out. But all I could see was the darkness that was in their eyes. So I just, not knowing what to do, turned around and walked out. As soon as I walked out, the devil jumped on my shoulders. Oh yeah, some big prophet of God you are. You can't even figure out how to sound back. So I got in the car, and immediately I came under condemnation because I felt like I had failed in the thing that the Lord wanted me to do. Why did he send me into that nightclub? So because I thought that I had failed, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my husband, no intercessors. Nobody knew what had happened inside of that club. A few years later, I was doing a women's conference down in Atlanta, Georgia. And there were several thousand women there, and I was just prophesying over each one, walking amongst the crowd, touching people's heads. And all of a sudden, in the back of the room, there was a young woman, and over her head, there opened up what I call a window to heaven. And in this window, I saw wild charging horses, which represent, in the realms of the spirit, a great measure of power. So I got very excited, and I walked back, and I thought, this is a divine appointment. This is more than the operation of the gift of prophecy. So I went back and laid hands on her, and when I did, she burst into profuse weeping. And I just gave her the word of the Lord, which had to do about her coming into new levels of power. After the whole conference was over, that young woman walked up to me, and she said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And I looked at her and I said, "Honey, I prophesy over tens of thousands of people every year. Please don't be offended if I don't remember you." And she said, "Well, it's for a good reason, because I don't look anything like the first time you saw me." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "You remember about 3 years ago when you came into that Satanic Night Club?" And I mean, my spirit jumped straight up in my body, because I hadn't told a single person about that story. And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I was the satanic high priestess that was sitting in the middle of the front row." And she said, "When you walked down to that music stand and got in that music stand, everything in me wanted to leap out of my chair, rip your head off, and drink your blood." And I went, "Whoa, I'm really glad that didn't happen." And she said, "But then something happened. You burst into uncontrollable weeping. And when you started weeping, you disappeared. And an incredibly blinding blue-white light appeared in your place." She said it was so blinding that I couldn't even look at it, because I thought, if I do, the cornea of my eye is going to be burnt. She said I actually put my hands up over my eyes and tried to peek through the crack in my hands because it was so bright. She said, "Then as soon as you came in, you just turned around and walked out. And when the door of the club shut behind you, I was totally blind." She said, "I asked my friends to please take me to my apartment, and when they dropped me off there, they didn't want to leave me because they knew that I could not see. And so I told them to just go away and leave me alone. And as soon as the door shut and the latch on the door hit, I threw myself down on the ground and gave my life to Jesus Christ." And she said, "Since that day, I've led almost every member of that cult to the Lord." So I've been teaching for probably 25 years now that there we're coming to a day of transfiguration, when we're going to become the seeable, tangible, touchable, recognizable light of God to arise and shine. And basically what happened in that club was a result of that message. So I just really want to encourage everybody in the audience out there. I'm not telling these stories because I want you to think I'm some super anointed woman of God. I am a forerunner, and therefore the things that I do, you can do also. And the reason is the anointing starts at the head, but it comes all the way down to the hem. You're stepping into an entirely new age where you're going to be prepared to do exactly those kinds, have exactly those kinds of encounters in your own life. And so I'm really just telling you to encourage you, get ready, get ready, get ready. the Spirit of the Lord is about to begin to move to bring about the revealing of the thing that has not yet been revealed. And you're it.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Nancy. Just an honor to share life with you, and so blown away by these stories. Wow. Stay tuned, and we'll look forward to putting up some more awesome content coming soon. Revival School's got a YouTube channel. Global Ascension Network has a YouTube channel coming soon too, so keep your eyes open for that. And if you want to get notifications when there's new content, you subscribe, and then those notifications pop up for you. So thanks, Nancy. Once again, an absolute delight to have you with us. Loving what's happening, and loving dreaming for the more, and loving seeing, just everywhere we're going, lives transformed, and more people inspired, equipped, and empowered to live in their sonship and to live the divine life that we were called to live. Looking forward to meeting a bunch of you guys out there in YouTube world as well, and sharing the adventure and partnering together to bring heaven to earth. For us, this is way more than just about nice stories, but we are dreaming of unprecedented systemic revival that impacts the 7 mountains and the nations. We're dreaming about raising up kingdom giant slayers. So if you want to be a part of a dream like this, of bringing heaven to earth through every sphere of influence, then get in touch with us. We want to share the dream with you, and we've got great resources available to empower you in your journey of discovering sonship and running in your calling, and to live out sonship and to live the divine life. We'll catch you soon. Hope to connect. Blessings.